Hello guys, I'm Bethany and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a sit down video. Obviously I'm sitting down, so I'm going to be reacting to your unpopular book opinions. I'm so excited because I've seen a few booktubers do this and I find it so entertaining to watch, to hear people's opinions asked on my bookstagram, and I'm gonna react to them. Let's get started. I'm very excited. I obviously read through these when the responses were coming in and they're very interesting. So the first one, someone said their unpopular book opinion is when an author compares how big the guy is compared to how small the girl is a lot. I get that's a typical trope for lack of better words, but I think some diversity would be great. And I do agree with this. I feel like if you mention it like once or twice, it's okay, but like if it's the whole book, you just keep mentioning the fact that he's like really tall and big and she's like really small, like I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like, if you say that in the book twice, I'm gonna remember it. Like, I don't need you to keep repeating it to me. You know what I mean? I agree with that. I think that diversity would be great and we don't have to keep harping on something in the book, like about their appearance. You know what I mean? Okay, next is it's almost never worth buying a fiction book. I only want to reread 5-star books. And I agree with this to a certain extent. I agree that I only want to reread 5-star books. Most of the time, I feel like if a book's less than 5 stars, less than like 4.5-ish, I probably won't reread it. But obviously I do buy books, and honestly I feel like I'm very particular about the books that I buy. If I know a book probably doesn't have that great of a rating or reviews from people that I know, I am not gonna buy a physical copy of it. I know that sounds bad because you shouldn't discount a book because someone else doesn't like it, but for me personally, if I'm not like almost positive that I'm really going to enjoy the book, I'm not going to buy a physical copy because I like don't want to spend the money on it. And if I rate a book less than 4 stars, I don't want to have it in my bookshelf because I'm not going to want to reread it. But I feel like all the books that I have physical copies of, the majority of them, I really love them, and I would like want to go back and look at my annotations, look at the places that I tabbed, and like remember those moments because I did love them so much. Even if I didn't rate them a 5-star, like even like 4.5, 4.25, I would want to like go back and reread them. If I'm buying a physical book, unless it's like discounted or a thrift store book, like I found it at a thrift store, I'm going to like try to make sure that the ratings, reviews, the majority of people that I know that I trust their opinions on books or I trust their reviews, that they really loved it. Does that make sense? So, and then also like if I buy a book and the first few pages I don't like it, or I don't end up reading it within the return time span, I'm going to return it. Anyways, next, the same person said, on the same note, I would rather get fiction books from the library than buy them. Well, I used to go to the library all the time, like when I first like kind of got back into reading a couple years ago. Especially when I first got married, I would go to the library all the time, and I do really love the library. I think it's great because now I feel like they're getting so many books that are very popular and you're able to find books that you want to read. But for me, I have no patience. So if I really want to read a book, I just would rather buy it because I have no patience to wait on it at the library. Does that make sense? So, and especially books that are really popular, the wait time is usually months and months, and I have no patience for that. So I end up buying the book anyways. But I do get the appeal of like borrowing a fiction book over buying it because a lot of them you might not love. And I think I would prefer that if I know I'm not gonna love the book. Basically, I used to go to the library all the time, and some books I wish that I would have like read a physical copy of so I could keep. And some books I'm like, I'm glad I read that at the library. I didn't want to read a physical copy of it. Like I didn't want to own it. Does that make sense? The next 3 are so funny because they are 3 completely different opinions about the same thing. So, it's okay to dog-ear a page, more so with library books. The next one is dog-earing pages is straight up sinful. I can't. I will die at the sight of someone doing it. And then someone said, I think it's okay to dog-ear book pages if they're not borrowed/library books. So as you can see, 3 completely different opinions on dog-earing pages all next to each other, which I find hilarious. Like I think that's so funny because it just shows that we all have like different opinions about the same thing. And my personal opinion is I do not dog-ear my pages. I don't like that. More power to you if you do that. If you own the book, that's great. But for me, unless basically when I would dog-ear a book is if it's really old. Like if I thrifted it, if I like have owned it forever and ever and it's just really worn, I won't mind dog-earing a page. But if I like bought this book, like I just obviously bought A Court of Wings and Ruin, I'm not going to dog-ear the page because I just bought this book. Like this is brand new and I want it to stay brand new. Like that's how I am with my books. Even though I read them, I want them to stay in perfect condition forever. So unless it's a super old book, I'm not going to dog-ear the page, but if you want to, that's okay. I don't think I ever dog-eared library books, but I feel like if a library book is old and it's already been dog-eared, that it's not a big deal. I feel like whenever I borrowed books from the library as a kid, I would just dog-ear the page because I didn't have a bookmark. But honestly, I started using whatever I could find as a bookmark, and then I actually started buying bookmarks, which I recommend Lauren's library card if you want bookmarks because they're super cute. But anyways, I just thought that was really funny that all of these opinions were next to each other. The next one is very interesting, and I actually messaged her to elaborate on it because I needed more information. So she said there's no such thing as an overhyped book. And I found that very interesting because I was like, okay, I get what you're saying, but I need you to tell me more. So basically she said that, let me just read what she said because I'm not making any sense. I always see people say books that were overhyped and then talk about books they didn't like. I always think that just because you didn't like a book doesn't mean it doesn't deserve the hype that it got. Everyone has their own opinions. And just because a popular book isn't your favorite doesn't mean it's a bad book. It just isn't the book for you. I think we can both honor the hype a book got and still say we personally didn't like it. If a book has a lot of hype, that means a lot of people like it, and there doesn't need to be anything wrong with that if you don't. I like completely agree with that, honestly. I feel like we talk about like overhyped, is a book overhyped, but basically it's like there's no such thing as a book that's overhyped, because if it's overhyped, a lot of people loved it and they loved it for a reason. So just because you didn't like it doesn't mean it's not overhyped. Just because you like it doesn't mean it's overhyped, because overhyped doesn't exist. Does that make sense? I really enjoyed that. I really like that. Okay, next, my husband actually submitted this. He's had this opinion and I really wanted him to submit it. So I was like, Ethan, I need you to submit this into my question box because I love your opinion on this. So he said fantasy genre. Specifically, he's talking about the fantasy genre because that's mostly what he reads. He said, if at least one main character doesn't die by the end, it's not a good book. Trauma creates fantastic character development for the other characters. So I think that is a hot take. I really do. And I think I agree. I mean, nobody wants a main character to die, but it like helps the character development of other characters. So for instance, like when I think about like as a kid, I read The Hunger Games, and in the last book, if you don't want to know, if you have not read or watched The Hunger Games, I'm about to spoil it for you, but surely you've read it because it's so old. But in the last book, at the very end, Prim dies, which is very sad. Nobody wanted her to die. We loved Prim. I feel like the whole series is Katniss protecting Prim, and then Prim ends up dying at the very end, which is like heartbreaking, devastating. But I feel like it does create character development in books. And also Jessa Hastings has talked about like a blood toll, that you have to not necessarily kill someone off, but do something that gives weight to the series. So for instance, Prim dying gives weight to the series, and it makes it, the emotional weight is heavier because someone died. The character development is better. Does that make sense? Also, doesn't mean a person has to die, but maybe like a relationship has to die, or like you really fall in love with this couple together and they break up or something like that, and it's just something that has to happen in the series for the series to have more weight. Does that make sense? So I do agree with him. I feel like all the books that I've read, the series I've read, really main characters haven't died. Well, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they have not, which is great. We love that, but I do feel like it makes sense for a main character to die in a fantasy series because it does give character development to the other characters, because otherwise they wouldn't have that. And especially like, it's also not realistic to have like this dystopian fantasy world and not have a main character die. Like Finnick also dies in the Hunger Games, which is so sad. I loved Finnick, but it had to happen for the, you know, series as a whole. So anyways, I'm off my soapbox. The next is Christina Lawrence books are mid. First of all, does mid mean just like average? I never use that word, but honestly I feel like Christina Lawrence books are like hit or miss for me. Some of them I really like, some of them I haven't liked as much, but I also feel like authors is like really to each their own. Some people might really like her, some people might not. And then next is I don't like Emily Henry's writing. I feel like that's a very unpopular opinion. I feel like everyone loves Emily Henry. I've liked her books, but they're not like my favorite books ever. You know, I loved Beach Read, I loved Book Lovers. I haven't read People With Me on Vacation, but I'm not like a stan. Like I'm not an Emily Henry stan, you know what I mean? And then next, really hurts my soul, is Shatter Me wasn't that great. And I did reply to this. I was like, are you talking about the first book? Or are you talking about the series as a whole? And this person said that they're talking about the first book. So if you just read the first book and you think it's bad, you have to continue the series. Like that doesn't even make sense. You have to continue the series to know if it's good. Like just because I personally didn't love ACOTAR that much, I still continue the series and I can look at it objectively and say that the second book was better. So if you've read the first Shatter Me book and didn't like it, you should continue it because it gets better. But also, I really loved the first Shatter Me book. I thought it was really good. I mean, compared to the other ones, like they're all probably better, but I still loved the first one. That really hurts me, honestly. Okay, next I find really funny. She put laughing emoji. She said, I don't hate the accidental pregnancy trope, which I feel like is very unpopular. I feel like everyone's like, oh, I hate the accidental pregnancy trope. Like I don't like it. And I kind of agree with her. I kind of agree because I don't hate it either. I kind of like it. It just depends. I feel like it has to be done well. And I feel like some people are like, I don't like the accidental pregnancy trope because it makes them like, that's the reason they stay together is because she got pregnant. But I feel like when I've read it in books, that isn't the reason they stay together. Specifically, one book in mind, I think it contributed to the plot of the story. Like it just made sense with the plot of the story, but I guess some people don't like it, but I also don't hate it. Like it's not like my least favorite trope. I don't mind it. It just depends on the book. So, and then lastly is I don't like enemies to lovers unless it's fantasy. And let's talk about this because I feel like honestly, enemies to lovers in romance is like not real enemies to lovers. Like they just like have a miscommunication about them thinking the other person doesn't like them when really they're in love with them. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. So I feel like enemies to lovers in romance isn't necessarily enemies to lovers, because they really actually do love each other, you know? But enemies to lovers in fantasy is very real. Like, a lot of times they're on different sides of like a kingdom, or like one kingdom against another kingdom, whatever it may be, and they physically like are enemies, like their families are enemies, or they have to betray one another, you know, that kind of thing. And I feel like it's so good. Like, enemies to lovers in fantasy is so good. And if you want a good one, Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves is such a good fantasy duology. If you're wanting fantasy romance with enemies to lovers, it's so good. So this is a quote from Dance of Thieves. It says, "It's awkward, isn't it?" He said. "What's that?" I replied, my voice far too breathy. "These moments when we're not hating each other." I love that quote. I posted on Instagram in like a carousel when I read that book. But I love that, like when they're supposed to hate each other, but like they're starting to catch feelings, but they're still enemies. Love that. So good. I completely agree. Guys, I filmed this whole video and forgot to mention one unpopular book opinion. So here we are again. This setup probably isn't the same, but you know, it's fine. So the last one is, I don't like reading smut and I think books are better without them. And to really all know how I feel about this, I completely agree. I would prefer books without spice. I think books, for the most part, are better without spice, unless it's contributing to the plot or like the intimacy between the characters. I don't really understand the point of having spice, because I don't want to just to have it, you know? Like, I would prefer no spice, closed door, and have more of an emotional connection. That's another book opinion that I did not mention in this video. So there you go. Now I'm gonna outro this video. That is all of the unpopular book opinions. Let me know if you have any more in the comments, or any of your thoughts on any of these that I shared. Please comment below, because I would love to hear. But books all are in good fun. Like, just because you like something doesn't mean I like it. Just because I like it doesn't mean you have to like it. We're all people with different opinions, and that's a great thing. So if you like a book that I don't like, if I like a book you don't like, it's okay. That's great. That is honestly such a good thing, because we all physically cannot read every single book in the world. So if I don't like a book and you do, you were able to read that and really enjoy it for that author. I read a different author and really enjoy it. And we're all contributing to reading books and discovering new authors and things like that. Does that make sense? So I think this is all in good fun. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was entertaining. I am so thankful for you. Thank you for watching. I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers, which is insane. Like, that boggles my mind, and I'm so grateful. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon for my next video. Bye.